One of the most important things we need in business is momentum. Launch support is about creating momentum for the operator, for the people that are being developed, to create a momentum. I mean, the way the model was set up by Truett was, I want you to come and be my partner. You're going to be here day to day, run the business, but I'm here to help you if you need.
Like millions of people around the world, we need to work. Some do it for the money, others do it for the recognition. And if you're lucky, you do it because you love it. But finding purpose and passion in your work can be easier said than done, and the path to success can be unpredictable at best. But if you're looking for some inspiration, then I've got one question for you. Are you consuming your career, or is it consuming you? Welcome to Consuming Careers. Talk about leaving a legacy. What if you could directly influence the customer experience of millions of people who visit one of America's most successful restaurant chains? Hi, I'm Bruce Smith, and on this week's episode of Consuming Careers, we're meeting with Andre Kennebrew, who over his 15-year career with Chick-fil-A was directly responsible for hiring and mentoring over 500 store operators across the country. His passion for growing people and leaving a legacy has not only shaped the impact he's made throughout his career, but also directs how he continues to influence the lives of everyone he meets. And to prove it, he shares his cell phone number on this podcast and invites you to give him a call. So let's join my conversation with Andre on a lively morning at Matthew's Cafeteria in downtown Tucker, Georgia. Well, welcome back to Consuming Careers, and it's a beautiful day in downtown Tucker, Georgia. And I'm so honored to have my guest, Andre Kennebrew. Andre, welcome.
It's so good to be here. Thank you so much, Bruce, for having me.
Yeah.
It's a joy to be here.
This is going to be a lot of fun. Yeah. So we met probably a couple of years ago through a mutual friend, yes. Kurt Candler, who was, episode 5 or 6. Interviewed him a little while ago. And you've had just an awesome career that I'm excited to get into, to hear about kind of building culture and building people and leaving a legacy. These are all just awesome, initiatives that you've taken on, and just seems to be your heart in that. So, but to start off, you've chosen to meet here at Matthew's Cafeteria.
Yeah.
Why Matthew's?
Yeah, so the city of Tucker has been a very mainstay type of location for myself and my family.
Yeah.
My wife taught at Tucker Middle School, which we could throw a rock and throw that way to the right and be there. Both my children graduated from Tucker High School, which I could throw a rock that way. And I served on the as PTSA president there, and so that was a big part of our life.
Yeah.
Our church is on Brockett Road, which is about 5 minutes from here.
All right.
And then early on, from a professional standpoint, I had some feedback that I wasn't a good communicator. And so the person that was coaching me at the time, I was probably 34, 35, so this is 30 years ago, said, you should consider taking Toastmasters. And I looked around for a Toastmasters group, and the Toastmasters group was held right here at Matthew's.
Nice.
On Friday mornings at 7:30.
Okay.
And so I spent about 3, maybe 4 years going almost every Friday to Toastmasters.
Wow.
And that's the place where I got a chance to practice, get feedback, and hone my communication skills.
Yeah.
So that's pretty deep to me. And in the room that we're sitting in now, I served as the chaplain of the football team here at Tucker.
Okay.
And every Friday, the football team walks down here. It sits down in this location.
Yeah.
And they eat some fried chicken and some vegetables to get ready for the game. We won 2 state titles during that time period.
Oh, that's great.
And then I would stand and give the devotion to the football team before the game that night.
So this is like the epicenter.
This is epicenter. I mean, just spiritual, professional.
Yeah. Well, if the listener hasn't been to Matthew's Cafeteria downtown Tucker, you got to check it out. So it's been here since 1955.
Yes.
And it's considered a meat and two. For those of you not in the South, you can get some just awesome Southern food, and we've been here a couple times, and I just love it. I love these kind of places.
If you ask anybody in Tucker where you should go for breakfast, they're going to say Matthews.
That's it.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And
that's
right
great.
in downtown Main Street, Tucker, Georgia.
Well, Guy Fieri of Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, which, by the way, is like one of my favorite shows. He highlights this one on his show, so it's got to be something.
Yes.
It's got to be good.
Great food here.
Well, would you mind? There are some people listening that probably don't know you, and I'd love to get 30 seconds to a minute of kind of your background, where you grew up, and kind of where you are today.
Yeah, I'll try to do it real quick here. Grew up in Columbus, Georgia. My dad was a military guy, so we grew up on the base down at Fort Benning, which is now, I guess, Fort Moore. Bit of an athlete. Ended up playing high school football and leading to a football scholarship to Davidson College, which is right outside of Charlotte.
Okay.
Spent some time with Kroger right after school in the management program. And if anybody knows anything about Charlotte, North Carolina, it's a banking center.
Yeah.
And so I joined the banking world. And so 1987, First Union bought a bank in Georgia. And they said, hey, do you want to go to Georgia? And so being from Georgia, they wanted some Georgia folks to come back down here. So I came here in 1987 to work for First Union. But during all of that time, my spiritual life was growing at the same time. Okay. I did not grow up as a Christian. I grew up and found Christianity at a later age, 25. Met my wife at 26. Her mother told me that if I was going to date her, I was going to have to go to church. So I started going to church.
That's a motivation.
And I started reading the Bible. And then when we got married, 2 years later, she said, you need to join the church.
Yeah.
So we joined the church in Decatur that eventually moved to Tucker. Okay. And it's now located on Brockett Road. And during my time there, I worked as a trustee, a deacon, and then I felt a call from the Lord to go into ministry.
Awesome.
Being called to ministry does not mean you stop what you're doing and go to the seminary.
Yeah.
It means you try to wait and find out what God wants you to do. Yeah. But I did that, and I began to work at our church as administrative pastor.
Gotcha.
And so I did that about 4.5 years, but I know I'm a marketplace guy. I'm meant to be around. I'm very extroverted, want to talk to people, want to see people.
Yeah.
And the only time you see people in the church is on Sunday, and when it's night. So I was like, okay, got to get back in there. Plus, I was somewhat immature, and this is something I'll get into later, is understanding the pace of work. The pace of work at First Union was so fast. Yeah. And the pace of the church is so slow. And I couldn't match the pace.
Yeah, sure.
Very well.
Sure.
And so that was hard. And so 2006, Dr. Tony Evans, who went to Carver Bible College here, was going to be speaking at Chick-fil-A. And I wanted to hear him. He's one of my favorite preachers.
Yeah.
And so I called a friend of mine who I worked with in banking and said, hey, I want to hear Tony Evans. He said, well, come on down. And she said, well, I know you are doing this ministry thing, but there's a job here that's been open a year.
At Chick-fil-A?
At Chick-fil-A.
Okay. And
she said, you need to apply for it. And so I did. I didn't get that job, but through my interviews, 4 months and about 20-some interviews, they found a place for me.
Wow.
In what's called franchise selection.
Okay.
And so in my career at Chick-fil-A from 2006 to when I left in 2021, 15 years, I probably did about 7,500 interviews.
Wow. Okay.
And selected probably or involved in selections over 1,000 folks. So that became kind of my niche. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that. How does a banker and a preacher go to be a selection guy? It's an interesting story. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later.
Yeah.
And now I'm at LifeShape. 3 years ago, I made the transition. LifeShape is one of our nonprofit ministries. We focus on mission projects, taking out Chick-fil-A operators, Chick-fil-A staff into different countries so they can experience what we call missional living.
Got it. Yeah. Is that is LifeShape only for operators?
Operators and staff right now. We at some point would like to extend. We'd love to get the church involved. Anything you do as part of ministry should have some kind of church involvement because the church is the center of everything that Jesus has told us to do. But we're a fairly young organization.
Tell us about kind of that how, how do you go from banking to the pastorate to your selection at Chick-fil-A?
It's interesting because the most important decision at Chick-fil-A is who's going to be your franchise owner.
Okay.
Because when you put that franchise owner in a community, a lot is expected in terms of keeping the brand.
Yeah.
And so you've got to have this combination of a really good businessman who has a great personality, but they also have to have a high character. And so the question we would ask is, would you want your children to work for this person, he or she?
Okay.
And so go back through, and if you listen to me talk a little bit, my first work was with Kroger, which is retail, and we actually had a deli.
Yeah.
So I learned about P&Ls, I learned about selecting people there, first time I ever selected people. And then when I went to the banking industry, I had a lot of sole proprietors, individual business people. So now I'm doing P&Ls and figuring out loans and who's a good businessman and who's not.
Yep.
And then when I went into ministry, part of my role as the administrative pastor was to help place people in ministry. And so we used to do this thing called Place. And Place was a way of assessing people's personality, their spiritual gifts, their abilities, connecting them to their passion and their experiences. So I got certified in that. And then I also got certified in interviewing when I was at First Union.
Okay.
So if you go back and you look at the profile of who they were looking for, is someone who understood the small business person. Could they run a business?
Yeah.
Did their passion match being an entrepreneur? Did they have good character? Did they have good chemistry? And so when I'm talking to young people, even today when I coach them and they've worked, I said, do you know your transferable skills? So I've worked in the grocery store, I've worked in the banking, I've worked in a church, I've worked in a restaurant company, and now LifeShape. And if you ask me what the knit is, it was the transferable skills that I had. Ability to connect with people, ability to assess talent, those kind of things. And so anybody that's out there listening to me should think about, like, what are the skills that I have that could transfer to another company or to another, even to another industry, whether it be profit or nonprofit.
Yeah.
So,
But I think there's more to it for you that makes you so good at it. And I want to think it's more around the way you care for those people that are coming through the program.
Yes.
Whether that's First Union, Wachovia, Church, or Chick-fil-A. And you've said, and I've written it down here, that you're passionate about growing people and leaving a legacy.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, why?
Well, again, if you study Scripture, it's there. The fact that Jesus had 12 and left, and because of his dedication to those 3.5, we're all a part of his church.
Yeah.
You see it with Paul and you see it with Timothy, how he left to encourage Timothy and even told Timothy to go find other people that he could teach and learn.
Yeah.
The power that we have is in passing on what we have to the next generation. Dan Cathy used to say a statement that really hit me early on. He said, we're preparing a place for a generation that we'll never see, a time that we'll never see.
Yeah.
And we have that responsibility.
So, leaving a legacy, I want to talk a little bit about that. And I was thinking about this last night while we were preparing for this. In this age that we're in of deconstruction, right? Everybody wants to deconstruct whatever part of the world they're in, whether it's their job or their church or the politics or whatever it is. It seems like in a world of deconstruction, you're throwing away the past, which is where legacy lives, right? Because you're bringing that experience and pouring it into someone younger. So I want to ask, does leaving a legacy really matter in light of, well, nobody cares about the past anyway.
Yeah.
If they're not giving any value to the past, why would I care about leaving a legacy?
Yeah. That's a great question, Bruce. I've never been asked that before, but it's just turning my head just thinking about you asking the question. I start with the young people when I'm speaking to them. I say, "You're smarter than I am." I mean, what I mean by that, if you give you a piece of technology or whatever, you're going to take it and you're going to make it better.
Yeah.
I said, but I am wiser than you are because I have gone through situations and made decisions and made them the right way.
That's good.
And so legacy includes passing on knowledge, but it more includes passing on wisdom, how to make decisions. So our young people today are sometimes not very good decision makers because they're operating out of their feelings. And so when I talk to my children and people, I said, listen, help people make decisions. Truett Cathy would say, people who make bad decisions, you make bad decisions, bad.
Yeah.
Good decision, good. Best decisions, best. I mean, it's really a simple process of just understanding how important it is to make good decisions, not on everything. What time you get up in the morning? Do you eat this or do you don't eat that so that your body? And so just having people understand that that's important. And so these are the things that, from a legacy standpoint, that I'm trying to get people to think about because it's important for them to have a quality life, legacy, be effective, but most importantly, have impact.
Yeah. So if I, just looking from the outside in, because I'm not an insider at Chick-fil-A, but if I look across, the country at all the Chick-fil-A's I've been to, it seems like, your thumbprint is on many of those operators that are out there now. And whatever that legacy is that you've left or poured into those leaders is showing up, on a day-to-day basis inside of a Chick-fil-A. And it goes without any question about how amazing the organization is. And I got to think you've played a pretty big role in that.
That is the greatest thing I can say about it at Chick-fil-A is having a 22, 23-year-old walk up to you and say, I want to be a Chick-fil-A operator one day. And I look at him and I say, you got a long way to go, buddy. And they look at me and go like, I think I'm ready now. You're not ready now. But then to walk into their restaurant that they own at 27, 28, 29, 30 and say, yes, what you visioned actually happened. Oh my God. Because here goes back to what I said before about the levels. That person who is just really here, the impact that they're having now is great because now they have 100 to 150 employees working for them that are getting paid, that are working in a great environment. I mean, that's what I'm about to jump out of my chair right now just thinking about that there's 400 or 500, 600 people. When you take their people that they lead and that work for them and the people that's impacting, I mean, it really gets exciting. And so it's very easy to get excited about legacy that way when you see the great work they're doing. And that's what turned Truett on.
Yeah.
Truett Cathy loved to see new operators, and particularly young operators, get an opportunity to run a business.
That's fantastic. Yeah. But I want to kind of get into maybe some of the tactics, if there are any. So I would perceive you as kind of a gatekeeper or a culture keeper, making sure that you do the right selection of operators for the future. Are there any tools or processes or any insights in how you did that so effectively?
When you're doing selection, the first thing you have to do is build out a profile.
Okay.
A lot of folks want a job description. It says, here's what you're going to be doing. But if you go back and you look at organizations, and it's the same thing when you think about it, it's when the NFL draft comes, they're going to have guys run, they're going to have guys jump, they're going to have guys take tests.
Yeah.
But they're working off a profile. They're saying, Tom Brady, he's the best quarterback ever, right? Yep. What makes him a great quarterback? And so you build your profile off the best. And that's what we do at Chick-fil-A. We say, who are the best performing operators in all the key areas, not just in performance, not just in sales, but in every key area. And then we say, what do they have in common? If you start with the model, and our model basically comes back to Truett, the founder. Yep. And I say, when I would speak and see someone get selected at a grand opening, I would say Truett would be so glad to go into partnership with you.
Yeah.
And here's why. Because you have this characteristic, and you have this competency, and you have these skills, and they're the same ones that he had.
Yeah.
So having them understand, because when I select someone, I always say, let me tell you why I selected you.
Yeah.
Because of this, and this. Now they know, right?
Yeah.
And they try to build on that.
So that whole profile approach, do you think that's transferable to any kind of organization? Does it work in churches? Does it work in banks? Does it work at Kroger?
It works anywhere. It's the reason you and I were having a conversation earlier about the 70% of the people that are not happy in their work.
Yeah.
If people were using the profile method, some of the people that they select, if they kept with it, they would not select them. Sure. Not because they're bad people. It's because they don't fit the profile.
Yeah.
They're great people. They're smart people. But the things you need from that role, they can't bring that. And when you put them in that situation, it gets them frustrated, and you get frustrated too.
Well, I bet it works backwards too.
Yeah.
So you take someone like your son, and who's working great in the kitchen, and they say, what's his name? Holden, you're doing such a great job. Yeah. We're going to put you on the front line, put you out front. And, it's supposed to be a promotion maybe, right? Or you take a good salesperson and you make them a sales manager, and they collapse, right?
Yes.
Because they're just not a good manager.
No.
But you just assume, well, if they're good in sales, they got to be a good manager. Yeah.
Happens all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Happens all the time. And it's one of the things that I think we do a really good job of. And each one of the operators of a Chick-fil-A, they think about that if they're bringing people on. Where is this person a best fit?
Yeah. Not only today, but
down the future.
Yeah.
Because you got to think that way, because it's interesting interview. I'm a Atlanta Falcons fan, and I was following the interviews with Raheem Morris.
Okay.
And one of the things that Arthur Blank said was the one thing that Raheem has learned from his time at the Rams is that he's going to lose coaches, and he's got to have a plan for replacing coaches.
Yeah.
And so all of us as business people and leaders and people that want to have legacy, we have to have plans for taking our top people and letting them exit us and go do well, and then being ready to take the next group and take them to that level and have them exit us.
Yeah.
And then we have to take the next group. And so there's this consistent, now there's always going to be people that are interested in being at the same place and not wanting to go.
Yep.
But to be successful in selecting people and to be successful in your career, you have to know this timing. You have to know this pace. You have to know when you learn, when you're ready, when you're not ready. You got to listen and kind of go with that.
Yeah. You mentioned something a little while ago about your coach, that high school coach that had set high expectations and standards. And when I look at Chick-fil-A, I think of it as a very human-centric organization.
Right.
How do you balance high expectations, high accountability, high performance, and still kind of do the soft caring for the individual? How do you balance that?
That's a good one. That is probably one of the hardest things that you have to do.
Yep.
And a lot of it depends on the order that you do it.
Ooh, okay.
And the order has to do with, the first thing is, I got to make sure they know that I care.
Okay, good. Yeah.
If I skip the fact that they don't know I care and I go straight to performance without showing care, then they're gonna feel like a robot.
Yeah.
And so my first step with every new person is to let them know that I care. But if you go into holding standards without the care piece, then you'll miss it. And so we have a term that we use. It's called winning the heart. Winning the heart. Winning the heart. As a leader, let's win their heart. Okay. Now, so that's what my coach had to do for me. He was eventually he did it backwards. he was very hard on me.
Yeah.
But then after every game, so if we played on Friday night, on Saturday morning, he was at my house talking to me and my mom, asking, how you feel. I mean, last night you had a little sprained ankle. How's that?
Yeah.
So it came after, right? But I knew he cared.
Yeah.
That's how we balance it. We try to let the folks know that who we work with, that we care, and we're really good with not only caring about you on the day you're working, but all the other things that you're going through as well.
Yeah.
And so there are so many times I can tell you that we're so much like family. It's not even funny. I was diagnosed with prostate cancer back in 2011, 2012.
Yep.
And I think I shared with someone, and I got a call that evening from Dan Cathy.
Wow.
He said, I heard you've been diagnosed with prostate cancer, and I have a doctor, and I really would like you to go see him before you make any plans for your care. Now,
Wow.
I'm stunned.
Yeah.
You know, he cares
Yeah.
at the highest level. And so there's things, and I say that, and not that I'm asking every executive to call somebody when everybody gets sick, but there needs to be people within your organization that when they hear about the everyday things that people are going through that are, because there's a lot of trauma, that somebody is responding to that.
That's good. That's good. Now, I think you had, and I really like this concept of launch support, and I think you had a critical role in launch support.
Yes.
And that really sets the, I'm going to let you define that and what's in that, but it sounds like that really sends a operator and their business in the right direction, setting the relationships in the right framework. Can you talk about what that means? Because I think there's a lot of application to that whole idea of launch support in business across many different industries.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the initiation of a business relationship, or maybe the initiation of a new hire, setting things up for success from day one. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's very important, because one of the most important things we need in business is momentum. Momentum. I mean, you've watched enough football games to know that all of a sudden the team looks like it's going to run away with the win, and then they fumble the ball, and then the momentum change. You've seen that enough.
Oh yeah.
Launch support is about creating momentum for the operator, for the people that are being developed, and that kind of thing, to create a momentum. So if you can think about, you're a brand new Chick-fil-A operator, and you've got to hire 125 people, and none of them have never worked at Chick-fil-A before, and the complexness of what we do in our restaurant, and they say, go, here's the keys, go open it up. It'd be a catastrophe.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd have all kind of challenges. So there's a team that helps prepare the operator, their team, and everybody for that, to make sure that they get off to a good start.
Yeah.
And then once they start, staying long enough to make sure that they can sustain the start they have, so that they don't go backwards, because you don't want them to lose momentum. You want to build the momentum, keep the momentum, and keep them and get to a point where, like, you got it. Sort of like a kid riding his bike for the first time. He's got training wheels on. Yeah. The day you decide to take the training wheels off, you're running behind them and you're holding the bike, and then when they get it, go like, I got it.
Yeah.
You turn the bike loose and they're riding, and they get confidence and that kind of thing. They're going to fall down.
Yeah.
Of course
Sure.
they are.
Sure.
But at least you got them to a point where they were.
Well, which kind of brings me to a lot of corollaries between what you do and probably the NFL too. Embedded in launch support is the individual leader. So you've got all these operational supports, but how do you support that new store operator? And I kind of equate that to, or someone who just comes out of college and they're in the NFL, because they were on this kind of slow trajectory, and suddenly now they're professional, and man, everything is just magnified. They're under a bigger microscope. Their compensation goes through the roof. Their relationships are just a lot more voltage in them, right? So what are some of the things that you do, or maybe Chick-fil-A does, to kind of support the individual operator so that they stay on the rails?
Well, every operator has a support team.
Okay.
So if you think about a restaurant and you think about all the things that are in a restaurant, you've got facilities. And so there's a facility person, there's a marketing person, there's a finance person. Every key area of that restaurant that they have to deal with, there is a support person who's just a phone call or text away.
Okay.
So let's just say I go out and the lights on my drive-in are not working. So they're like, what do I do? I got to, there's a person to call.
Yeah.
Or the power goes out. So there's a team. And that team is, I only named like 4 or 5 of the positions, but the team's probably made of about 12 or 14 people.
Well, who's in charge of making sure their heart stays one?
The operator?
Yeah.
That person is called the operations lead.
Okay.
Every operator is assigned an operator lead to be their point person for the restaurant. I mean, the way the model was set up by Truett was he wanted to help people get in business for themselves.
Yep.
So the way the model is set up is Truett would go and do everything, the license, the location, and all that kind of stuff, and he'd say, I want you to come and be my partner. You're going to be here day to day, run the business, but I'm here to help you if you need me.
Got it.
The operations lead is really the early Truett, who's like, you're there, but I'm a phone call away. Yeah. And the reason why I'm not there every day is because this is your business, not mine.
Right.
It's your business. And so there are decisions that you need to make. And so you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself.
Got it.
And then you've got the other operators around you, which is a really big network. When you open, they're there as well. If you go to a grand opening of a new restaurant in Chick-fil-A, you won't know it, but the local operators are there and kind of just standing around like, what do you need? So they're willing to send team members or just anything they can to help that new guy and make him feel like welcome into the market.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk about the transition to LifeShape. So if you could kind of, I think you already explained what LifeShape does, but it serves the operators of Chick-fil-A. Why is that important, the Chick-fil-A success?
Yeah. It's very important for us to be others-centered and not just centered on ourselves.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that the more successful you are, the more money you make, the tendency is to pull away. You think about somebody who today is walking the street, the next day they have a hit song, you can't even call them, you can't even talk to them. They're so isolated, get so isolated. And we don't want our operators to be isolated. We want them to feel like part of a family. So I went on my first LifeShape project in 2013 to Kenya. And it was a life-changing experience because I'm living here in the United States, not aware of the problems in this rural community in Kenya. Seeing that was like, wow, I have been selfish. I have been self-centered. I have been a baby. I have been the stuff that I complain about. They love to have that as a problem and so forth. So it sobered me. Sold me to go like, Andre, be more grateful, be more thankful, those kind of things. And so it's really important in any culture. Gratitude.
Yeah,
very
gratitude,
important.
Nice.
Serving others, knowing that others have greater needs than you, all that's important. And so what we try to do with LifeShape is when these operators and these staff go, is to affirm that. And no matter how successful they are in their careers, they'll remember that we're here to serve. We're not here to see how much money we can make. We're here to see how we can serve our communities and the world and that kind of stuff. That's why I think LifeShape's important.
Now, is that mandatory for the operator? Or
it's not mandatory.
Okay.
We're actually, my job, going back to the 7,000 interviews, is to recruit people to go on projects. So my title is I'm the director of relationships. And my job is to build relationships with operators and staff and use my current ones to recruit and ask folks to go and serve. So that's what I get to do. And then I sometimes will go and be a part of the project from time to time.
Well, I've been on a couple of mission trips. Went to Kenya. And that would have been, at least 10 years ago. Could have been longer. But it certainly was an amazing experience. But I did not expect it to be what it was when I was thinking about going. I thought, this would be cool. Hope I can fit it in my schedule. It'll be awesome to see this place. But the transformation that happened on that trip was really hard to communicate.
It was.
And the sad part is I didn't see it on the front end. So it wasn't like, wow, I can't wait till I get transformed and I'm going to go to, I'm going to do this all the time. So encouraging those operators who are probably a little bit busy, right? And probably looking at themselves saying, I'm doing just fine. Like, I'll send money, What does that kind of conversation look like?
Yeah. Well, we use folks who've served before,
okay,
which is really important, to take people who've actually served.
Well, that idea of what LifeShape is doing around missions, is that a Chick-fil-A artifact, or is that transferable to anybody, any organization?
Yeah.
What do you
I
think?
think every organization would benefit from thinking about ways that they can get their team members and employees to think about others.
Yeah.
That's healthy.
Yeah.
It's very, very healthy. So if it's not LifeShape, if it's not mission projects, it needs to be something where people are serving together. And I think there's some organizations that do it well.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Any big challenges that along the way while you were building operators up?
A lot of challenges.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you started, it was still, I don't know how big that organization would have been when you were just getting going, but man, it's blowing and going now.
Yeah.
So I would imagine the dynamics are a good bit different now.
More complex.
Yes.
When I started, we were a $2 billion company,
Yeah.
and we'll probably may soon be doing $2 billion a month.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
go from $2 billion in 1 year to $2 billion a month, and that's pretty serious growth over the 20-year time period. And it means more restaurants. It means more operators. It means more areas. We weren't in New York when I started.
Yeah, I remember.
We had very few restaurants.
A lot of pushback
California.
there when that started.
Yeah.
I remember that.
We didn't have restaurants in Chicago. So there's places that we didn't have restaurants even back then. If you looked at the United States, we looked like a moon. So you could start maybe around Virginia and come down in a quarter moon, and you come down through the south, and you go up, and you stop about at Texas, and we were all below there.
Yeah.
Now we're in Hawaii. Wow.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's
Puerto
great.
Rico and Toronto. So, yeah.
Well, what were some of those challenges that you kind of faced, and how did you push through,
I think
solve those?
The biggest challenge, I think, and I have to be careful in saying this, is when I got there, everybody loved Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
And then as we grew, we found out there were people that didn't like Chick-fil-A for some of our views and values.
Yeah, sure.
And when you're trying to serve people and do the right things for people, and people are throwing rocks at you and stones at you, and you can't figure out, you don't really know us, but that was a tough period. You just come get to know us, and typically that's what happened in so many communities where people would come to get to know us, and they go like, "Wow, they're really nice people."
Yeah.
So that was tough. The amount of leadership that we had to develop to grow that fast.
Yeah.
Which means that some folks probably got leadership a little faster than they normally would have gotten it.
Okay.
And so they had to learn while running fast. So I think we felt some of that sometimes in leadership.
Yeah.
So some of those things created some challenges.
So what's fueling your passion now? If you're not doing the operator development piece, well, maybe I think you're still doing some of that mentoring, but the selection side, I'll just open the question, like, what's really fueling your passion now when it comes to leaving a legacy?
It's young people.
Yeah.
My mission statement is to help create the next generation of Christian leaders, wherever that is. And so I serve on the Point University board, Christian University in West Point. I served some and was down yesterday with some folks at Impact 360.
Okay.
Constantly meeting with young people wherever I go, artists. My son called me yesterday. He's now with Chick-fil-A saying, "Hey, can we start some kind of group of you meeting with us and 4 or 5 of us young guys who are trying to figure it out?" And it's just this whole idea of saying, okay, taking these young folks to the next generation, that gets me fired up. And some of the things I've been able to do, even in at Life Shape. I had a chance to go down to Brazil and and be with some pastors in Brazil,
Nice.
and Guatemala, and other places, and so it's not just the United States, but anywhere. I've got a young man in Ghana
Okay.
that I coach twice a month.
Yeah.
On
Great.
Zoom.
Yeah.
And so it's anytime I have an opportunity to do that, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Every day of the
Yeah.
week. Yeah.
So I want to ask you a little bit about kind of fulfillment and finding purpose and meaning in your work. First question is, do you find purpose and meaning in your work, or do you just wait till you get home to find purpose and meaning in your life, and you just kind of do your work, and then, pays the bills, and then you go into your life for meaning and purpose?
Yeah. I can honestly tell you, I don't separate it.
Okay.
Everything I do is part of all of it. I had an opportunity to go through the Experiencing God workbook with Henry Blackaby years ago, 20 years ago. The whole concept that there is work where God's working.
That's right, yeah.
And so when I step out of my bed, I'm like, where's God working? When I go, to the coffee, where's God working? Right. Sitting here now, I'm like, where's God working? And so I don't separate it. If I'm eating, if I'm sleeping, where's God working? I'm just trying to seek that place and being able to find out and make sure I'm working where He's working. And I've lived that way now probably for at least 15, 20 years. And God just brings people in my life, and I just put it all together. So is it the work? Is it the process? Is it kind of what component, what facet of your work provides it? Like, I believe right now that we're experiencing God together on this podcast.
Oh, wow.
So, I get fired up about that. Man, that somebody's going to hear this podcast and go like, wow, it was just like what I needed to hear because, we decided to do this podcast. So that always gives me, I'm always thinking that God's up to something.
Oh, that's
cool. I've met so many people that I never thought I would have spent time with and met. And it just happened. But it didn't just happen. God was working.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, well, speaking of God working, what's He going to be doing on you in the next 10 to 20 years? What's the future look like? What do you think?
I think, I tried to retire, and I know I'm not meant to sit down and retire, that I'm going to always be someone who is sitting down with people and having one-on-one conversations, having small group conversations, encouraging people. I think that's the main thing now is to be an encourager. So many people need encouragement. I'll say this, it sounds real funny because maybe people think I'm young. I don't know if it's young or not, but I'll be 64. I don't want to be put out the pasture. I've seen people put out the pasture that people have stopped talking to or listening to because they go like, they don't have anything to offer anymore. Right. And I just don't want to be one of those people. I want to be at 80, 85, or however old it is, I still got young people come around me like, I want to spend time with you. Okay?
Yeah.
Come on, let's spend some time together. So
I don't think you have anything to worry about in that department. I think you're going to be all right.
Yeah, 20 years from now. Come on. I mean, whoever's the last person I spend time with that I give some wisdom, I hope he's not even born, or he or she's not even born yet.
Well, I'll call you. I'll call you in 20 years. Well, that's the whole purpose of this podcast is exactly what you're doing and exactly what you're sharing is the reason I'm doing this. All right, kind of the last hard question is when you look at your career currently or over the last 30 years, would you say that you've consumed your career or your career has consumed you?
I think I've consumed my career, but it was a transition.
Okay.
My early days were all consuming with work.
Yeah.
And I'll share this with you. My first job, like I'm gonna run a Kroger store, and that's what I was moving toward. Banking, I wanted to be the president of the bank. I'm like, I even dressed like the president.
Yeah.
I mean, my suits and everything, because I'm like, I'm gonna be the president of the bank. And around my early 30s, things began to change. And it was right when I had my son.
Okay.
And I started thinking to myself, all the things I want, all the things that I think I want will take me away from what I really want. To be at my son's games.
Yeah.
To be, with my, just to go on vacation because I saw it happening with the guys around me.
Yeah.
I was in a meeting one time, and he was saying the night before his son was in a baseball tournament, hit his first home run, and he missed it. And and he said, I gotta go because he's got another game because I don't want to, I'm like, you missed the first. And so I was like, I don't want to miss the first home run. I definitely want to miss the first home run. So that was kind of a driver for me. And then I began to think about what God might want me to do in ministry. And so that changed a little bit because I wasn't thinking career anymore when I went to ministry. I was thinking ministry. So that was helpful.
Okay.
And then later on, it just became like, I just want to be a good father. I want to be a good husband. My wife and I, we married 36 years. You met Donna a few minutes ago. 36 years, my son and my daughter. They call us every day still. We wish they didn't. Sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. But we have a great relationship with them.
Yeah, that's great.
And it was worth it. It was worth it not to go some places I could have gone in my career.
Yeah.
To have my kids still call me 2 or 3 times a day.
Oh, that's great.
So
that's sweet, man.
At 33 and 30.
Not everybody has that.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Let's shift gears. It's time for the lightning round.
Right.
Andre,
Ready.
are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, strap in. Here we go. 5 questions.
Okay.
You should know the answer to these, by the way.
Okay.
Okay, what's your favorite item on the Chick-fil-A menu, past or present?
Spicy chicken sandwich all day long.
All right.
Deluxe.
Good choice. Good
Yeah.
choice. All right. Most formative book or podcast on leadership or culture?
The one that stood with me the most is a really simple one: How to Win Friends and Influence People by
Dale Carnegie.
Dale Carnegie.
Nice. That's good.
Yeah.
That's classic.
Yeah.
Who, in your opinion, has mastered the art of leaving a legacy?
Truett Cathy, by far. I mean, his legacy will go on forever. Just what he's been able to do from being this 8-year-old kid growing up in the Depression who started selling coats. And then one of the things that you asked me earlier about, the next 20 years, realizing that most of the things that Truett accomplished, he accomplished after the age of 60. Isn't that incredible?
So there's still hope for us.
Still hope for us. Yeah.
That is really amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
If you could have coffee or come to Matthew's Cafe with anyone, living or not, who would it be?
Well, I mean, obviously Jesus would be first.
Yeah.
But if I was a human, it would be Abraham Lincoln.
Why is that?
Abraham Lincoln, I mean, he had just the stories I've heard about him. He's the president of the United States. He's the most powerful man in the world, and he always gave power away, from best I can understand. He always constantly gave power away. I heard a story the other day about this guy who just criticized Abraham Lincoln to death, and then he ended up choosing this person to be on his cabinet. And the guy said when he died, he said, there lays the best leader that's ever lived. To go through that process and then, of just saying, hey, I'm going to do the right thing no matter what. I just think he was one of those people.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, last question. Of all the sporting events you've ever been to, who has done the best performance of the national anthem?
Oh, that's Whitney Houston.
Whitney Houston.
All day long.
All right.
There'll never be another Whitney Houston. Yeah,
That's awesome.
No, she's number one by far.
Oh, that's great.
That's a good one.
All right. Well, thanks for that. And so, how can someone find you or follow you or connect with you?
Yeah. I usually this is going to sound real crazy when I do this, but I usually just give out my cell phone number.
Okay.
My cell phone number is 404.
Yep.
512.
Yep.
8520.
Awesome.
Now, what they have to do is they have to make sure that they say that they got my number from listening to this podcast. And they must use the title of your podcast and your name in order for me to respond.
I like that.
Yeah.
Oh, what a great idea. Okay, 404-512-8520.
Absolutely.
Consuming Careers Podcast with Bruce Smith.
That's it. They got to say that. All that's got to be there. I heard you on Consuming Careers by Bruce Smith. And
Whenever it comes out, that's right. That's right. Andre, thank you for the advertisement. I really appreciate that.
My pleasure.
This has been great.
Thank you for the work you're doing. I told you earlier, this is important stuff. As I mentioned to you, there's a lot of young people getting stuck out there. You might be one of them who's listening. Stay with this podcast. Stay with this podcast.
Yeah.
And you'll get unstuck.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining me.
All right.
Thanks. Thank you for joining us on Consuming Careers. If you've enjoyed the show, please click the follow button in your podcast app so you won't miss any of our future episodes. And if you have a minute, write us a review. We truly appreciate hearing from our listeners. And as always, I'm Bruce Smith, and you've been listening to Consuming Careers.